Greetings, Bhante.
Greetings.
Continuing on the conversation from last time, I'd like to ask a few more questions. In advance, appreciate your time. So, last time, Bhante, we talked about trauma and the body and mindfulness. I'll start from the following question. Talking about trauma, the specifics, the details of the event, on the one hand, versus attending to the body sensations. Is it part of healing to talk about trauma?
To a certain extent, yes. The tendency is to overindulge ourselves with this, I'm tempted to say resource, because in the mind of a trauma victim or anyone who has undergone trauma, we start to look upon the memories of the trauma, talking about the trauma, finding like-minded individuals discussing the trauma, theirs and ours, asking questions. Suddenly there is the highlighting event of things pertaining to the trauma. Now that is a problem, because the healing process might actually end up being stalled. Nevertheless, having said that, it is very much necessary to bring it up. To last time, I think I mentioned how it is wise to journal, to speak about the trauma, open up about the trauma to individuals that we trust. Because oftentimes there is that tearing of trust. Like I was trying to mention last time, how there is this sense of vulnerability that has taken place where the person has become completely and utterly disillusioned about the safety that the world was supposed to provide for them, but it hasn't or didn't. And therefore they have this very distrusting attitude towards the world. They're never really taking the world and life with trust, with openness, because they're always anticipating when the other shoe is going to drop. Even if there's something wonderful that's happening to them, really, in the back of the mind, what is really taking place is, okay, any moment now, maybe it's a phone call, or mommy's going to come and hit me, or I'm going to get a nasty text message or a phone call or an email that's completely going to crumble, destroy this wonderful arena, this wonderful life that I'm enjoying now. So all these things not only can, but they usually do take place in the minds of people. Having said that, I noticed that there's been quite a response since the first of these series on trauma. I should have called it on healing trauma, because we're not going to just aggrandize or just throw accolades at trauma itself. No, it would be quite stupid and silly. No, we're discussing trauma in order for us to identify what is it, or what are the contributing factors, or what are the things that make us still be stuck in trauma, avoidant of it, discussing it, divulging it, exposing it, talking about it, as you said, and to find proper ways of breaking free from it. That's the key. So this is all about healing trauma. I have to also mention that. So given the responses that we've been getting, I'm really happy that it's resonating with people. And secondly, that we'll be able to do more of these. And my hope is that today I discuss more on those two things I mentioned about the physical body. And I also mentioned about mindful grounding briefly, the intervention that I had to come up with to help patients, clients that I was working with, primarily teenagers, and then later on when I was in private practice with individual clients as well as their families and also couples. So it has been very helpful. So that's something that I would like to share also with people, so you can quickly use tools that can help you to break free from the cyclical dukkha, as we call it in Buddhism, in Dhamma, which is pain, suffering.
Bhante, could you talk more about that dukkha? Because trauma, we mentioned last time, if we think of it as an event, and then there's the aftermath. How does the dukkha manifest? What's the dukkha of trauma?
Well, we did discuss how emotions get locked inside the body. That is undeniable. The body is the tongue, the language facility for emotions. Now, okay, the emotions get to be kept frozen in time. The person becomes arrested in their thinking, in their behavior, in their speech, basically overall behavior, their life. They cannot conduct themselves. They cannot conduct what they're passionate about in life, for example. Why? Because they're arrested. The body gets clenched. It doesn't know how to feel relaxed. So the body is the key, as I was saying last time. Okay. But the body was something that the person was carrying through. And something, all of a sudden, the memory kicks in. Something shows up in their awareness. And now the body is really jolted into a state of being that is, as far as the person is concerned, very unnatural. Now, in Buddhism, the way Lord Buddha taught us as to what makes a human being and this living experience, one of the ways that the Buddha taught was through the 6 sense organs. By the way, the 5 senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the 6th would be, in Buddhism, we have the mind, which is the most powerful organ. We call them sense spheres, 6 sense spheres. In Pali, it's salayatana. Now, you can think of these 6 senses as 6 powerful radars that are detecting what's happening in life. Because you have these 6 awarenesses or 6 consciousnesses, each of these is a consciousness. That's how we recognize them in Buddhism. Things that you see, things that you smell, things that you taste, things that you hear, things that you touch, things that that pop into your head. All these things are possible doorways for triggering. What? Triggering memories, specific memories. Specific memories that don't stay as memories. Why? Because memories are associated with emotions. And where are the emotions found? Again, the body. So what happened is now a trigger happens because your sense is picked up. You saw something. The memory is just like all of a sudden there's a chain reaction hitting immediately to the body. The emotions come up. And because of that, suddenly the person's life stream, in a way, is arrested. They become frozen. They don't know, they become tunnel vision, many people. They can't function. That's why an athlete, for example, the worst thing that an athlete can undergo is, or experience, is the sense of fear. When the person is going to do a high jump, for example, in the track and field, their mind, or just running sprint, especially when you're looking over to your left and the right and you're seeing all these top level athletes from around the world, the best of the best, suddenly the mind, you can't afford to have the mind go back and think about that incident that happened, I don't know how long ago, that can completely incapacitate you. Why? What is getting incapacitated? The body does. The potential for success is eliminated. At least it is subverted. At least it is incapacitated. It's taken offline, in a sense. We were talking about the prefrontal cortex going offline because the limbic system is taking over. The amygdala is completely saturated. The executive ability of the brain to see and to discern is not there. So what I'm describing is dukkha. So the typical trauma victim goes through this triangle that I was mentioning. Trigger, memory, boom, the body. And all of a sudden there is freeze or complete trepidation, fear. The person is no longer in the present. They have locked themselves out or have been locked outside of reality. Now, emotions are important tools. They can tell us so much. The body, therefore, which I said is like the language, the tongue of the emotions, is nevertheless trying to say, okay, these are things that are locked. So when a person is rigid in their tummy or in their chest, they can't breathe, in their throat, this and that, the diaphragm isn't moving properly for them to give themselves a good, deep breathing, relaxing and massaging the viscera, the internal organs, which when you are breathing shallow or when you're afraid of something, the diaphragm gets to be not anymore soft. It becomes very rigid, stiff. But it's so thin, it's so lively, it's so flexible. Suddenly it doesn't. Well, that movement is necessary for the lungs to expand. When they expand, the organs, the internal organs also get a nice massage. There's a lubrication of the internal organs. And if you think about a traditional Chinese medicine, qi gets to be moving, flowing, not rigid. Rigidity means the opposite of life, the opposite of health. You need the energy to move. So from different angles, we're looking at dukkha. So rigidity equals, in this case, dukkha, suffering. Why? Because the person is now frozen in time. And mind you, it's not even that time that happened, that event that took place. It's not even then. They didn't get transported there either. This is a tricky area to understand the relationship of ourselves with emotions. So what we have is, I might be throwing a lot at you here. Okay, so bear with me. Emotions are important so long as they serve a purpose. Similarly with the body, because they work jointly. Because of the body, we understand that there's some locked areas, emotions that need to be addressed. Okay? So the memory we cannot do much about. And a proper good therapist really is not very interested in memory. Why? Because the emotions come in and say, why don't you want to give legitimacy to my memories? Remember your first question. You asked, is it a good thing to talk about our trauma? Well, when you keep talking about the same thing and you add to that a good dosage of emotionality and you give it some time, you're going to be soon enough talking about other things that had nothing to do with the event. Nevertheless, they will increase certain states within you, agitation in you, and that is what makes people become overindulgent, because they get intoxicated by the attention that they're getting, by because it's very addictive. Also, people don't talk about this. I'm a trauma survivor. I know I have had PTSD for decades. I know it's very addictive, even when you have no one to talk to about this. But you can always fall back on that event, how they treated me over there, as a justification for how you are not living and leading your life. So what is this? This is all a matter of getting stuck. In fact, every time you are recalling a memory, it's like, and briefly talking about it, what is happening is I resemble it to starting an engine, car engine, and the battery is not, it's not very, the juice is not there. What I mean by that is the person is like, if you've ever heard of it, the engine. And then suddenly it starts. But rarely does the last portion that I just did actually happens. So it's a perpetual state of that is reenacting trauma, talking about your emotions, which, by the way, oftentimes are not talking about reality. Now, wait a minute. I was just saying about emotions being locked, frozen in the body. Yes, back then. Because they did not pass through you. You did not allow proper processing through the body, processing of that trauma physically to manifest, to shake itself, literally. Maybe I should actually give a technique of that, perhaps at the end, that could help people with severe trauma, because that's one thing, and the emotion to which we give so much credence are two different things. The event has taken place in the past. Yes, that's true. Oftentimes, the emotions and the passage of time, our hesitation and reluctance to talk about the emotions or to talk about the event itself will cloud and smudge and add more layers upon the emotions, including details about the event that, in fact, might never have taken place. This is key to understand. So we cannot put too much faith in the emotions either. That's why when you ask me about, is it a good thing to talk about it? Well, yes. Again, in Buddhism, we always talk about, is there wisdom? Is there discernment when I'm doing this? When I'm following certain steps, there needs to be wisdom applied. Otherwise, trauma will bring about trauma. Trauma will cause trauma. How? Well, you're not living life. Why? Because you are living in your emotions, which are highly tainted by your opinions and feelings, emotions, basically, about the past event. So the person is basically stuck. This is the real trauma, I consider. Where on one hand you have the emotions in the body, okay? It's like a storehouse of emotions. A reservoir of emotions and inadequacies and things like that. Not just of the past or things caused by the past, but every time you are freezing yourself from reality, cutting yourself off, you are re-traumatizing yourself because you are no longer inhabiting your body. When you freeze, you no longer inhabit the body. You are on automatic pilot. You are not participating in your life. You become a zombie. You become not alive. You become fearful. You don't think. You want to forego decision making. You will go into the back seat, not even passenger seat. At least the passenger next to the driver's seat. We call it shotgun in the US. They might be able to guide the driver. But in this case, the person will go all the way to the back seat. Why? Because it makes them feel more comfortable, because there's a secret contract in the mind of a trauma victim. In many cases. Either the world becomes soft-edged, either I get to have these elements removed and all the stuff that I want to be included there, which makes life bearable, livable, enjoyable. Either I can have that or none. So this is what in therapy we call all or nothing thinking. This is dangerous. Fortunately, this doesn't happen with every trauma victim. However, it is always there. It can dominate the mind. It can overtake the person. So long as they are not able to inhabit the body through grounding themselves in the body in a safe manner. Memories you can never trust. Emotions you can never trust. Fully. This is key. For the trauma victim, memories and emotions are two sacrosanct things, realities, in fact, quote unquote realities. Meanwhile, reality is taking place and they are shunning it, they are avoiding it, they are not participating in reality. When they're walking in and out of a room, they are not present. So one of the exercises that I would give to therapy clients and trauma clients and trauma patients, as well as students in meditation, would be to know with which foot are they entering or leaving a room. You won't find a book on therapy with that intervention listed in there. It's coming from the Satipatthana, the original source of all mindfulness endeavors in the world you see. Comes from Lord Buddha. This is called Kaya Gata. Kaya Anupassana, I'm sorry. There is the Vedananupassana, there's Chittanupassana, and there's the Dhammanupassana. Kaya gati sati. Kaya means the body. Lord Buddha realized that the body is the first essential step for establishing awareness. That's the closest thing to life that you have, not your feelings. Your feelings might very well be smudged by your own opinions, thinking, expectations, anticipations, fears, etc., etc. But your body will not lie. Your breathing will not lie. That's why that's the first thing I observe, other than the loud, grosser features of the body when a patient or a client is sitting there and I'm asking questions, or I'm observing the breath. Have they stopped breathing? Are they breathing shallow? Are they holding on to the breath? Is their tummy rising or falling? Is their chest rising or falling? They might be excellent actors, but the breath, they can't fake it for too long. If you observe them well, you will see something's up. But the key thing here is to have that awareness to observe. Sati, we call it sati. Mindfulness. And there's a term, and the other term that joins sati is sampajanya. That is having full awareness of what is going on. So there's the element of discernment added to the quality of mindfulness. These work hand in hand. So my objective has always been to help a person be able to identify, the trigger point, the trigger that happened, the sight, the sound, whatever it was. They have to come to me and tell me what was the immediate reflection of that in the mind. That is, what memory popped up because of this. And then as a result of the memory, what happened to the body? So this is where a lot of people have a difficulty to identify. So what I will do is take them where they are in the therapy room. I don't do it anymore, but when I used to do it, I do this now sometimes with students, or teach them how to do it. I'm teaching the audience how to do this. To be able to drop into the body and see, feel, metaphorically feel in what area of the body, what's happening. Is there tension? Do they notice? So this is where they need to stay with themselves. So what you're doing is you're teaching them how to be real, to trust the body more so than the emotions. This is where many a time I've noticed therapists, including so-called experts, fail because they identify the body with emotions and that's the end of that, essentially. No, there's a lesson. Otherwise, why is a trauma transformative opportunity, like I was mentioning last time? It's supposed to be transformative. But so long as I'm stuck on the emotion, the body, emotion, body, that arena, we're really not going to rise up and out of trauma. Otherwise, we're always going to be doing the trying to start the engine. So therefore, reenactment itself becomes dukkha. The replay, that you're going to, any mechanic will come and tell you, stop it, you're going to burn, you're going to flood the engine. So talking about trauma, if you're not using it wisely, with panya we call it. Panya in Buddhism is wisdom, discernment. And then you're just going to flood the engine. Well, I'm telling you, using sati properly with the body is key. You can't, we're not saying what the body is undergoing is to be disregarded. It's the opposite. It's the opinions, because This is where it's dangerous when we have too much information and not enough proper guidance. Now, remember, Western therapeutic modalities are quite, you can say, in their infancy. Remember, Lord Buddha gave us tools for identifying physical trauma, mental trauma, emotional trauma, and to break free from that. You had arahants, fully awakened beings, coming out of their trauma, overcoming their traumas and becoming arahants. Western psychology has a long way to go. But nevertheless, they're doing some very good work compared to a generation or two ago. So this is not a competition. That's not what I'm trying to say. So we have to look at using the best of tools. So last time I was talking, like even today, I mentioned how journaling is important. Talking about the trauma with a properly trained, experienced therapist, especially one who is not into just talk therapy. I never appreciated that, never cared for it. Talking is just talking. Bring it down to the body. Sooner or later, it will turn intellectual otherwise. So during therapy, what the therapist can do, ask them to reconnect with the body. Like when I'm asking you this, when I'm saying these things, what do you feel and where in your body? Give them that space, give them the time. So a proper, good therapist will not rush the patient. Remember, I was saying about creating a safe space, holding that safe space for them, giving them that trust back in life, and in being and inhabiting the body in that room with you. So that later on, when they go home, they can inhabit that room by themselves in the body, to be in the body. You're training them. You are role modeling. You're modeling for them. So you're becoming a representative of how life was supposed to be. Trustworthy, kind, giving, with soft edges. So this is where our expectations, unrealistic expectations rather, about life, when we pull away, because the attention otherwise is directed outward, that is a cause of suffering. When you want life to have all these ingredients, what you're perpetuating is more tanha. We call it tanha, which is constant craving, thirst. You don't want to have the trauma again popping into your head. Well, I'm sorry, that's not possible. And let's say you get rid of this trauma. What about the other traumas that are waiting to happen? So it's very infantile, childish way of looking at, yeah, I'm doing therapy so that I can get over my trauma. I can erase it with a magic eraser and we're good to go. It will never happen again because now life is becoming bearable. That's very infantile, childish, very simple-minded. And it definitely does not have growth possibilities at all. So in Dhamma, in Buddhism, we have these things called vipallasas. Vipallasas are distortions in the mind that we create, we invent. There's several. One of them is to look at the world that is completely conditioned, completely based on various causes coming together in a certain alignment, in a certain vortex, in a certain time period, under certain conditions, and manifesting in that form. Voila, that's it, end of story. Now, the mind comes in and says, I like this. I like to repeat this. How can we put crazy glue around this and keep it the way it is? We like to have this be, in fact, the norm. This is what I call Disney-esque way of living. That's why when you go to Disneyland, you're not going to find anything real. Really. Even the smiles are not real. I'm sorry. Mickey Mouse, all this. Oh, you go. I was telling the other day to a group of students how one time, first time I went to Disneyland in Los Angeles, I was like, we went into this submarine tour ride, and we got down there, and I'm looking, and I was like, oh, there's fish. I was like, oh no, it's not moving. Oh, there's barnacles. Oh, wait a minute, they're glued. It's plastic. Oh, there's crabs. No, they're not real, but they look nice. They're dead. They're not alive. They simply appear. That's what we are trying to do. Vipallasa, it's a distortion in thinking. So similarly, to think that you're somehow going to be completely eliminating trauma as such, so that now you have just a vista of life minus the trauma that occurred to you, that is delusional. How did that change you, really, then? This is where trauma is seen as a transformative opportunity. If you're able to identify the ignorance with which we are joining life, we are approaching life to live life. So there needs to be a certain maturity necessary from us on our behalf. We have to really show life that we are maturing with our understanding. So your expectations have a lot to do with this, based on your previous experiences. This is what we call growth. In therapy, there's this term called wounded healer. We become that. Lord Buddha says in one of the suttas in the numerical discourses, which I found some years ago, someone was mentioning, hurt people hurt people. Lord Buddha says this in Pali. Those who are hurt will end up hurting other people. So hurt people will hurt people. But what will hurt people who have healed themselves? What will they do? You have many, 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 many examples throughout the Buddhist history. And that's what we're trying to emulate in life when we try to help each other, heal each other. That's why you practice metta. So that your smile becomes, you're not kumbaya, you're not like in a, altered state of mind, creating this delusional world from which you come and smile to this person, a fake smile to make them feel good. No. You have a lot of scars. Some of them are still like with Band-Aid. So, but you come out of it. So in that sense, to talk about trauma, it can be quite healing. Yes, absolutely. So now you used wisdom, discernment to talk about trauma, to get to an objective. And the objective is mature way of looking at things. That I have been childish to think that this impermanent thing, to expect it to turn permanent. That's what a child does. To look at a conditioned reality and say that I want it to be unconditioned. To expect a life to not have trauma. For all those people who don't know, I mean, joining us now, I've lived through decades long of trauma. So it's important for us to use that not to crawl out, but to understand and really push ourselves up. And as we're doing that, understand our relationship with the body. And you cannot heal without understanding the relationship with the body. This is all, yes, intellectual understanding is one thing, as I was mentioning, but you have to connect with the body. So now, by the way, I want to stop and see if there's any questions.
Just to sum up, maybe, Bhante, it sounds like healing from trauma doesn't mean getting rid of the triggers or establishing this perfect environment where everything is soft-edged, as you said, but to stay grounded even in the presence of those turbulent ways of triggers.
Yes.
It's not that trauma is the problem ultimately, it seems, but the fact that our attention tends to be in the wrong place. So that's really helpful to see that there is power that we have.
Yes.
Healing possible through our own efforts, not from some outside condition.
Yes. Whenever the attention is directed externally, you're in trouble. Same thing in relationships with people. Couples, for example, they would look at, oh, once I am united with this person, once I get married to this person, once I, then everything's going to be perfect. No, because that person, you just made them, turn them into the source of happiness for you. You're setting yourself up for big time failure. Instead, we need to turn the gaze back here. How? First, the understanding has to be there. There must be a shift in our expectations of life. So first of all, when you say, how could trauma happen to me? That itself is a wrong question to ask. Because again, in the terms of Buddhism, which trauma are you talking about? In fact, which lifetime are you talking about? Trauma or traumas, plural, from which lifetime could you be specific? Western psychology has no clue of what I'm talking about. They've never even gone there yet. It's beyond comprehension for them because they still have no idea how to test it. But guess what? The body, which we've been talking about quite a bit, does not just keep memories of traumas from this life. Yes. Yes. Because attached to this body, remember the memory machine I was talking about? The mind? Sometimes the traumatic events that we've undergone, we've experienced in different lifetimes, have been so loud, so, like I used the word knots, I think last time, knotty, so heavy, and we were so attached to those significant moments and events in the past, under a different name, different species even, different gender, etc., different realm maybe. But now you're here, inhabiting this body, and then when you try to go into meditation, some things show up. Feelings, experiences, blockages. And as meditation teachers, the job is to help make sense of that experience. Not take the person back to that event necessarily, to probe this is what happened, because it doesn't matter ultimately. What you do with the trauma, whether it was 1,000 eons ago or now from this life, it's the same mechanism. The reason why I mentioned past lives, this and that, is not to, really complicate things. No. is just to look at things in a wider scope and just see that the tools of healing are the same. You work with the body here by using a deeper and clearer understanding, mode of understanding, which requires us to stay put and to see what's happening in the body. Now, mindful grounding that I was mentioning, I'll describe it now, and then perhaps we can, I could demonstrate it, and we can post that as well. The person starts while standing. It doesn't have to be standing. They could be seated or even lying down, but lying down has a tendency of making the person maybe get so relaxed that they will fall asleep. So the key thing is to have the person anchor themselves in the present moment. How to do that? So the person would stand and they would start, let's say, with the left foot. And they would tap the foot to the ground, just tapping it just gently, maybe with the toes, with the ball of the foot, the front side of the foot. All right. Now, as you're doing that, there is tactile perception physically. Now, the person might be so much in their head that they might not be able to pick up the senses, the sensory input coming in from the body. For that, the person must also be looking down at the foot doing the tapping. In addition to that, if they can, to touch the foot, that's great, but they need to have some flexibility, obviously. But if they're sitting, that's easier. But these two factors of tapping, hearing themselves tapping it is also an added factor of grounding. But seeing is essential. They need to be looking. Unless the person is blind, then they're much more sensitive to the hearing and the touching, the tactile, kinesthetically. So any one of these senses will allow them to start their grounding, which I called it mindful grounding. So once the left side is done, they will go switch over to the right side. So they'll do the same thing, tapping with the right foot. Now they're looking at the right foot, tapping, feeling it from the right foot. Now, what I didn't mention is as the tapping begins and you tap, you will say, "This is my left foot." Okay? So you have tactile, visual, maybe auditory, right? And now you've engaged your speech. So other parts of the brain are also now activated. So what are you doing is you're bringing all your resources into one focus. So that you switch over to the right side and you say, you tap, you look, you say, "This is my right foot." And then you go up to the ankle. "This is my left ankle. Right ankle, left shin, right shin." Now you get to the knee, right? So perhaps you would be able much easier to touch the knee and say, "This is my left knee." You're touching it. But you need to tap it now with your hand. You need to feel the tactile perception. "This is my right knee," etc. And go up left thigh, right thigh, left buttock, right buttock, left chest, right chest, left shoulder, right shoulder, left bicep, right biceps, left elbow, right elbow, left forearm, right forearm. You can even do this because you're so close now to you don't have to lean in, etc. "This is my left hand." You can move and wiggle your fingers. See them, look at them. Not just see them, but look at them, gaze upon them. Similar, and you can turn them to see the palm, the back of the hand. Similarly with the right hand. "This is my right hand." This is my head. This is my left ear. Touch it gently, the earlobe. This is my right ear. This is my right earlobe, etc. Then you point the hand, the left hand, to the left side, and you say, this is my past. Look in that direction. Don't look at the hand. You look at where the left hand is pointing at, into the open air. And then you turn your head, your gaze, your eyes towards the right hand that's pointing to the right side of the body. And you say, that is my future. That is my future. Take a moment. And then you point the hands, both hands together in front of you, where your feet are. And you say, this is my present. This is my present. And then you turn your hands towards your chest. And you point, just gently tap your chest or your face, whichever. And you say, this is my beautiful body. Take a moment. Feel the touch. This is my beautiful body. And then that is basically roughly the structure of it. Now, you don't have to go through all of these parts of the body. It really will anchor you further and further the more you do the different parts, of course. But what if you're in a traffic jam? What if you're in a situation where you have to really give a response to something that is not comfortable? Somebody came in, let's say, and is yelling. A boss is yelling at you, and you were in a good mood, or you're in a board meeting and someone gets up and accuses you of something, and all your colleagues are sitting there. Your reactions will kick in. If you've had any bad experiences, even from childhood, they're going to simply, as if they were always there, they will come at you like a locomotive, like a bullet train at you, unless you quickly drop with sati and sampajanya into this body immediately. And you can do the foot tapping, but if, let's say, your feet are under the table, under the desk, it's going to be hard for you to see what is available. What if you're holding a pen with your hand, all right, or you have nothing in your hand but just your hand? Look at the finger. Look at the hand. Look at the hand in your mind. As you're tapping, you have to tap. You have to basically create the tactile perception. And you look and you say, that is my right finger. That is my right thumb, in this case. Because these are the only ones that are available to you visually and tactile manner. They're there. This happens very quick. And then you can turn and you can address the situation with complete presence. This is, when I did this with teenagers, I was blown away at the simplicity. And I was like, these kids have not gone to special training. I was so surprised at the efficacy of this. Because as I was mentioning, I think in the last recording we did, I was having them go through watching of the breath or doing body scan, this and that. But what was happening, two possible situations were occurring with different clients. Generally, two outcomes were coming out, and they weren't the outcomes that I wanted. One, the person was becoming dull-minded and even falling asleep in some cases because they're so relaxed, they don't know what that feels like. They're always hypervigilant. Suddenly they were so relaxed, they are now again disengaged from the present moment. And that's not mindfulness proper. Now, the other group was having the opposite reaction. They were becoming extremely agitated, hyper-focused on the breath, for example. So now they were becoming anxious. more so than they were before. They were getting angrier. This is when I was like, something's wrong here, because these were, a specific group of clients that I was working with, and I saw how the mindful grounding, which when I designed it and I, ran it by my supervisor, and she said, go ahead. And I did. And it only took, with one client, I remember, it took, by the second session, he was like, I don't think I need to come to therapy anymore. I was like, oh, that's never happened. This is a person who had been in therapy for at least 6.5 years. I was like, I'm doing something wrong. So I said, we can't just terminate, so we have to see this and that, and see the person dealing with other circumstances. He came in happier. This was a young gentleman, teenager, who would always get into fights. And I was like, so I would throw different scenarios. What would you do here? What would you do there? And I was like, yeah, like when I was sitting, he says, I couldn't get up because people think I'm weird. Teenagers. They'll make fun of me. Because I had given him like, okay, you can do it this way. When you're taking a test and you're becoming very anxious, oh, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. Instead of that, look at the pencil. And then follow the pencil and feel the fingers holding the pencil. Put the pencil down and just tap the fingers. What I used was something obvious. These people have lost connection with the body, remember. So you use something that is a little bit more closer to them, more obvious, more real to them than the body, because they're simply ghosts in their own bodies for whatever type of trauma that they've gone through. And after 6 or so sessions, I was like, okay. And then I remember one particular case where the client's parents said, we would like to come. And I said, is everything okay? And, we arranged for them to come, this and that. And so it was a family therapy. Guess what the parents wanted to know? Could you teach us how to do it? I was like, of course. Of course. Because their sibling was doing it, because he taught the sibling, the younger sibling, how to do it. And now that sibling wasn't getting bullied at a different school. Not getting angry at the bullies, able to pull themselves out of that situation. I call that a good, positive outcome. And yes, they didn't need therapy anymore. And that's the goal of therapy, ultimately. Because this person has developed insights, plural. The family was influenced by them in a good way. I was using a lot of Satipatthana, and I also mentioned last time that it's the 3 trainings, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Sila is the practice of virtue. This person was also becoming more cognizant of their treatment of the body, including swearing, cussing, using, let's say, the F word is normal now. I've even used to, like, even in my graduate program, I was sitting there with female classmates who came from good families. They were left and right tossing the F word in their conversations. As women, for me, that was very strange. In academia, it was a normal thing. A generation ago, that was unheard of. So this technique was also allowing individuals to become more respectful of themselves, for themselves, as well as to others. And you can imagine the same was applying to those who were hurting themselves, because that's also part of breaking sila. The first rule of sila, the first precept of sila, is not to harm or kill intentionally. So the person who was cutting themselves to feel, that's what happens when a person has major trauma consistently, chronically. They disengage. They don't even see themselves, like I was mentioning, beautiful. That part of the mindful grounding they get to, and they don't know how to do that. They'll stop. They can't say, this is my beautiful body, because they see it as a trash can. They don't know, they don't have a concept of love towards the body, because the world has not been a safe place for such people. But with a method like this, they can really reintroduce life to themselves and become real happy participants of life, which was the case. That person that I mentioned, with whom we were working, who had that issue, later on, she did encourage the therapist to, can we do that intervention thing again? She did the mindful grounding. The therapist allowed her to take over. Like, why don't you do it? I'll follow you. Because one of the best things to do as a therapist is to, as I said, model, to show them, which is another reason why I want to also demonstrate for people to see. And then this person was able to touch the body and said, this is my beautiful body. The therapist was in tears. So what was happening is, Dhamma is supposed to be healing. And you can learn from the trauma to come out of the trauma, but not by overindulging yourself, because you're not going to get out of trauma, because you're stuck there otherwise. And the emotions are going to, because the mind is diluted, it's going to come up with different emotions, different nuances of reality, which had nothing to do with the reality that happened. Because any reality that happened is no longer reality. It's just concepts. Yes, emotions are locked because of those events, but you can't go back into those details. They're done. You are having this present moment to deal with this, to work with this, to understand this, and to grow out of this, which is why we practice body awareness, feeling awareness, mind awareness, and awareness of different phenomena and their relationships. What I just pointed out was Kayanupassana, the body contemplation, feeling contemplation, heart contemplation or mental states, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana, which is the phenomena, principles, and their relationships. Be able to understand. But we all have to start from the body. That's, if you do that, you're good. It will cover the rest. Any questions? Does this make sense?
This is helpful and very, very applicable.
Good. Good. Great questions.